Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade. Well, in this one I wanted to talk about some changes that is happening on the 11.2 PTR. Blizzard did yesterday a bunch of class tuning, and this is probably going to be the last class tuning we're going to be getting before the patch launches on August the 5th. Obviously this involves Retribution Paladin, and that's what we are going to be covering in this video. So with that being said, let's go to the changes. Okay guys, so let's read this blue post. First of all, I want to talk about the title of this blue post, which is kind of funny because it's something I always tell you guys whenever I stream. You never want to be super strong at the start of a PTR cycle or a patch, because then you're just going to get obviously nerfed, and this happened to Hunters, and I think to also Death Knights. I think Hunters got 4 nerfs in this cycle, and DK's got 3. So yeah, never want to start too strong. As for Retribution Paladins, we started a bit weak actually, because we started with a nerf. Blizzard changed how our Divine Hammers worked and made it a 2-minute cooldown instead of a 1-minute cooldown, which I think is fine. It was just too strong in combination with Templar, and Templar in Herald would have never been able to compete with Templar if it stayed that way. Anyways, I think it's fine that it's a 2-minute cooldown. It makes old Retribution playstyle come back. You have to manage your cooldowns. When you have Divine Hammers, your damage is obviously going to be a lot stronger. But now, let's get into the changes here in this blue post for Retribution Paladin. And luckily for us, we are just getting buffs. The last blue post that Blizzard made I didn't cover, but we had a bunch of single target buffs. Now we are going to be getting AoE buffs here in this section. So let's start with this Retribution change for Herald of the Sun, which is Sunseer damage increased by 100%. So this is just whenever you critically strike with Divine Storm and or Hammer of Wrath, you leave a dot on your targets. So basically it's a perma dot that's always going to be on your targets. And while this is a bit small now, it's only a 2% mostly in the Mythic Plus setting. I'm going to use Mythic Plus as a benchmark to tell you guys how much actual increase these changes are. In Mythic Plus, Sunseer is 2% of your damage overall. With 100% extra, it's obviously going to be 4% now. So it's a 2% damage gain for Herald of the Sun. So pretty decent buff for Herald, which currently is a bit weaker, I think, than Temper. Not much from tuning, but for how it plays. It's a dot playstyle, and sometimes dot doesn't get the full value because the target dies or something like that. So yeah, I think it's nice that they're buffing Herald of the Sun here. Now after that, we got changes for just generally Retribution Paladins. Divine Storm damage increased by 10%, so that's huge, especially for Herald, because Herald's damage breakdown at the end of a Mythic Plus dungeon is, I think, around 40% of your damage is Divine Storm or something like that. So it's pretty decent for them. If we take that breakdown in account, let's say it's a 4% damage increase for Herald of the Sun. For Templar, that's not as high, because Templar's breakdown is pretty different. The first thing you have there is your Empyrean Hammers, which is around 30% of your damage. After that, you got 25% of your damage, that is Hammers of Light with the new tier set, because you just spam that thing a bunch. And after that, around 15% to 18% of your damage is Divine Storm. So it's a pretty decent amount of damage that we're getting. For Herald, probably a 4% damage buff. For Templar, it's around 1.5 to 1.8% extra damage. So pretty decent at the end of a Mythic Plus dungeon. Now, the next one is Wake of Ashes, and we have to bundle that up with Seething Flames as well, because they are mostly combined. Wake of Ashes damage increased by 10%, and Seething Flames damage increased by 20%. Obviously, Wake of Ashes is whenever we use that ability, and Seething Flames is the 3 extra hits of Wake of Ashes that we get after that. So normally those two things combined are around 5% of your damage, so 30% of that is around an extra 2% extra damage on those combined abilities, which is pretty decent. 2% extra damage there that we gain in both AoE and single target, because those things hit both things. And now Truth's Wake damage increased by 20%. So this one is a bit higher than the other two, because Truth's Wake is actually pretty high in terms of damage. It's around 6 to 7% of your damage at the end of a Mythic Plus dungeon. And the good thing about Truth's Wake is that it's uncapped damage, because it's a dot that you leave on all your targets whenever you Wake of Ashes. It's pretty powerful, and 20% means that we're going to be getting around an extra 1.5% extra damage for both Herald and Templar. After that, they fixed an issue that made Wake of Ashes not benefit from Avenging Wrath when it activates from Radiant Glory. Basically, Wake of Ashes wasn't getting the 30% extra damage from Crusade, you know, and its haste. Well, actually, the haste doesn't matter, but the 30% extra damage matters, you know. So yeah, nice that they fixed that. All in all, these buffs are really, really nice, especially for our AoE, although some of these affect also single target. Okay, so with all these changes, where does Retribution Paladin stand? So if I had to use a tier system, you know, S, A, B, I would say Retribution Paladins currently are in an A+ spot. This is because, well, combining the buffs that we got last time for single target and these ones that are more focused on AoE, we are in a very decent place as Retribution Paladins. We're not the top DPS, but we're very, very viable, you know. And this is really good, and I'm happy about it because this means Blizzard is keeping their promise that they made in Dragonflight, where they said that Retribution Paladin was always going to be viable after its rework, because, well, we don't have a backup, you know. Retribution is the only spec that is DPS for Paladins, so I'm really glad that they kept that promise. And well guys, that's going to be all for the video today. I hope you find it informative and you enjoy the video, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching everyone.